Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sports Week with Pete Foxcroft. It's the COVID edition. Yet again, 8 months strong. We've been in our kitchens and living rooms, and I'm excited this week. Look what I got here. I got a book by our good friend Perry Lefko, and Perry joins us here. We got a half hour with Perry to find out a lifetime of stuff that he's been doing. Perry, thanks for taking time to join us.
After this half-hour show, you can do a book on me because you'll have everything, okay?
All right, I'll do it. So
the deep dark secret.
Let's start with this book too. I read this book; it's great. So give us a little bit of background. Like I want to start with way back when, but I'm holding the book up, so let's talk about the book.
Okay, we'll go with Eddie right off the top,
yeah,
and then by the way, I've got the Nick Kiprill's book here too. You can see that, okay? So, but
that's
let me go.
Drafted, right?
Yeah, let me go with this. Yeah. Back in the late '80s, Eddie was playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He loved to go to the track. I was covering thoroughbred racing for the Sun. We met one another, wrote some stories, and we kept in touch. A few years ago, I approached him about doing a book, and we didn't really go anywhere, right? When he went through his cancer battle, it's a couple of years ago, when he was declared, or when he's deemed to be cancer-free, I called him up and I said, "Do you want to try that book again?" He says, "Definitely." So that gave him the impetus, the fact that he beat cancer, but more importantly, he wanted to share his story, with other people going through cancer. He went through colon cancer, but it could be any cancer. He just wanted to basically say, if writing this book helps one person not have to go through what I went through, then it was worth it. So Eddie and I shared a lot of enthusiasm about horses, but at the end of the day, the real reason we did the book is because Eddie wanted to talk about how it affected his family, how it affected his friends, and the work of the caregivers and the caretakers, the unsung heroes when it comes to cancer. So the book came out around a year ago this time, became a bestseller, and it's going to paperback soon. Actually, I think right now already. And I would say that between the both of us, I think we're very proud of what happened.
That's got to be something, though, when you walk in and see something. So our family has that with the whistle, something that we invented. And you go into a store and see your work on a store shelf around the world. Same with you with all your books. But this one especially, it's the most recent, along with the Kipper book we'll talk about in a second. But how does that feel when you walk into a store and there's your work sitting there retail?
Well, the first thing I do is I move them into a more prominent place and boot out some other books, okay? That's the first rule of self-marketing. You have to no one is going to love your book more than the person that did it, honestly. Because in the bookstores, they got 100 books are all vying for that viewer, to see the person that'll grab their attention. I don't think I'm the first person. I don't think the last person who kind of merchandised his products a little bit more.
I put my hand up for that. We do that with the Fox 40 stuff. I go into Canadian Tire, move it all around.
There you go. It's called merchandising, okay? The first time I saw a book that I had written, it was the Breeders' Cup and came out in 1996. I mean, that was the ultimate thrill. All of that time I spent in isolation, writing the stories, the chapters, and then all of a sudden it arrives on the doorstep one time, the finished product, and it's kind of like, wow, I actually wrote a book. Like when I was growing up, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a sports journalist, and I wanted to write a book, or at least books. So to see that first book was like the unbelievable thrill, because it's hard, it's physical. Otherwise, you're just working on a computer and chapters are going back and forth, and you get the proofs. It's a very long process. But yeah, when I go into the bookstores and I see my books, yeah, I guess I feel pride, but I'm always looking for that next project.
Right. So 11 books in a quarter century, basically, for you. Are some books easier to write than others?
Let me just point out, when you said 11 books in a quarter of a century, it sounds way more profound in 25 years. A quarter of a century.
I got it too.
Quarter of 100 years. And so, yeah, I've been doing it for that long. And every book to me, and it's kind of like maybe a director, producer, actor, like every one of the books I do means something more to me. Now, one or two books may mean the most to me. And the book that means the most to me is the book I wrote about Sandra Schmirler, who, in my opinion, that book came out in the year 2000. She had died earlier the year. And of all the athletes I've ever covered, she is the one that to me was the greatest of them all, because came to a Canadian Championships 3 times, her team won 3 times. Came to a Worlds, they won 3 times. Came to the Olympics in 1998, their team won it. And that was the year that curling was went from a demonstration sport to a medal sport. So there was all the hype about the Canadian men's hockey team that, if memory serves correct, they didn't win a medal. Wayne Gretzky was stuck to the bench.
Right.
So after they win the gold medal, Sandra, she's like in the commissary. Wayne Gretzky walks up to her and congratulated her and said, it's great what you did. And she's like, Wayne Gretzky's talking to me, like, because she was such a very, very humble person. There was not a lot of ego. And I'd say it's the same thing of not only her and her team, but most curlers are like that. So, it was such, to me, like a tragic story that she didn't beat cancer, and that she had like a 9-month-old child and a 3-year-old child. And a few years before that, she finally met the man of her dreams, her soulmate. She had been married once before, but her previous husband didn't really care about what she was doing. So it wasn't the most important thing for her to be a great curler. That wasn't her whole life. What she wanted was just to get married to someone who loved her and to start a family. And she did it. That was the most important thing for her. And like I said, sadly, cancer ended her life far too soon.
When you write a book, you must get involved with like your lifelong friends, with the family, with the people now, and like you have to get into their life to be able to write the book, I imagine.
It happened with Sandra more than any other book I've written, because once Sandra passed away, and I talked to the family and Sandra in January of that year about doing a book, and Sandra's basically saying, do you think anybody would care? And every time I do a book, it's the same thing. Do you think anybody would care? And I say, you're like a fish in a fishbowl. You're swimming around, not thinking of anything. People are looking into that fishbowl and they go, that's pretty interesting. So they never quite understand how other people see them. And like I said, unfortunately, she passed away in March. And I asked the family, could I still go ahead with the project? They said yes. And they gave me 2 journals that she had kept. That was the key to the whole thing. I'd lost her voice, but found her voice in a different way. And I would say, yeah, till this day, I'd say I'm fairly close with the family. And I know her eldest daughter wanted to meet me. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it so far. And I hope one day that book is made into a movie, because it came very close. CBC had optioned it twice. And then just as it was about to go into production, the money fell through. And so yeah, that's beyond all the fact that I've accomplished my hopes and dreams by writing books. I would love for one day for one of those books to be made into a movie.
That would be cool. That would be really cool. So you started off with the hockey news. Then when I kind of met you, even though you didn't know I did, was when you worked for the Toronto Sun covering the horse racing, and they had your picture in the paper every day, and you were looking sharp. And I go, I'm just a kid at the time, go, wow, horse racing. I love horse racing. This guy, Perry Lefko, he knows more about it than anybody. And I grew up kind of living racing through you, and then going to the track and so on. And then the book, The Greatest Show on Turf, right? The Breeders' Cup. The Breeders' Cup became the Super Bowl of horse racing.
Yep.
And obviously you have a love for horse racing and you're covering it. And then that led to that book. Was that your first book?
Yeah, but let me just give you a funny anecdote about you seeing my picture in the paper with my picks. I remember one time I was at Greenwood, and there was some old guy looking at the picks. So I walked up to him and I go, hey, what do you think of that guy's picks? And he goes, he's okay. And I go, he stinks. He's lousy. And I walked away knowing that he didn't know it was me, right? I talked to somebody today about it, saying, if people needed to know what I thought about, my picks to make their selection, then they shouldn't be there to begin with, right? Most people, I would think that, my knowledge of handicapping wasn't very good. Once in a while, I'd pick a long shot, whatever. But it's a very, very detailed, structured type thing when you're handicapping. If you're really good at it, you're doing it like a job, like 68 hours a day. I'm not spending nearly that amount of time. I never really did speed figures. Never, people that did speed figures understood that if 2 horses were racing at different tracks at the same day at different distances, if you put the mathematical equations together, you'd say if they were racing today, the same track, same race, which one would be faster? And that's what speed figures are all about. I know people who've done it for a long time. I never really got into it. So my attraction for covering horse racing was just because I wanted to find a way to improve my craft. I was young at the Sun, really wasn't going anywhere, and the opportunity came up to cover horse racing. And I said, "Yeah, I want to do it." And the new boss who came in at the time, Wayne Parrish, he said, "Go ahead," you know. And to me, it was the greatest place to meet the greatest characters I would ever experience, because if you cover traditional sports like hockey or baseball, it's very structured and you really don't get a chance to know these people more so than ever. When these athletes are making $20 million, the reality is long gone by that. There is no connection between the media and these athletes. I'd go to the racetrack, I could find trainers, jockeys, valets, grooms, whatever, right? Owners. The only person, the superstar, the person that you want to, not the person, but the animal that you want to talk to doesn't talk to you.
Right.
So you always have to try to understand that they're not machines. And there are times when they're not going to race to their best for whatever reason. And then you talk to the trainers. I remember, I won't mention his name, but it was a big race in Kentucky, and the horse, local horse, went down there to race and didn't run very well. And I said, "What happened?" He says, "Oh, the horse had his feet done a couple of days ago. I think he was still stinging." I think,
Right.
come on, man. Like at the time, it may have seemed okay, and maybe I wasn't smart enough to realize there could be a million things that went wrong. But to say that the horse was still stinging from getting his feet done a couple of days ago was pretty bizarre. But and it's because they never really know. They have to, the horse has to go back to the barn. They have to check out, did it have a cough? Was the white cell count a little too high, right? Did they just not like the track? It could be a million different reasons. So that's why it's this great unknown why a horse you expect to run very well doesn't run very well.
You have 2 books on there. You did Pinball and Flutie, right?
Flutie came first. That was in 1996. We started after the season ended.
After the
I wanted to do it because I thought Doug Flutie, and he didn't really care, but he eventually agreed to do it. And one of the greatest things that happened to me writing that book was I got to interview Donald Trump. And
really?
That's because Donald Trump was with the not the XFL,
New Jersey Generals,
the United States Football League, and he had the team. So he signed Flutie when basically the NFL didn't care, right? So I quoted lots of people in the book based on a story Doug would tell me.
Right.
So I said to my wife, "What if I tried Donald Trump? You think he would talk to me?" And she said, "Give it a try. What's the worst thing that happened?" Yeah. So I called up Trump Tower and I said, "I'd like to speak to Mr. Trump." Yeah. They patched me up to his office. The executive secretary says, "Let me talk to him and we'll get back to you." And 3 weeks later, he gets back to me. He'll do the interview. It was a Friday morning at 9:00. Phone rings and Perry, Mr. Trump's on the line there. And I had 8 million questions I was told to forward ahead of time. I asked him the first question. He just answered what he wanted. Like, see now, like when he's answering questions that have nothing to do with what was said, that's what I experienced. But 15 minutes later, they said, "Okay, Mr. Trump has to do another meeting," right? I said, "Okay." I ran outside. I had the tape recorder. And my wife was there in the playground with the 2 kids. I said, "I got it. I got Donald Trump on the tape here," right? So if anybody says, you're you're BSing, well, here it is. I'll show you the book. There it is, right? So it's
where were you? So Breeders' Cup in Toronto. Where did you watch the Classic? Were you upstairs in a booth? Were you on the rail? Where did you watch it?
Upstairs in the press box, probably walking around with my book, trying to show it to everybody. And they had this. They expanded the press box just for that. Yeah. So if you remember that week, it was terrible, the weather. The day of it, it was like, 25 degrees, 20 degrees Celsius. It was like God had just opened up the heavens and he's going to shine down on Woodbine. It was great.
That's true. Wrestling. Give me some of your favorite wrestlers.
All-time favorite is The Undertaker, who just had his kind of like ceremonial ending, on last night, Survivor Series, where Bret Hart was screwed. Yes. Undertaker, I think that was the greatest character they ever made. The entrance music is by far amazing. The lights come down and you
Yeah.
hear that bong. And early in his career, when he was the Undertaker, really looked like, he was it. And I think he was the most enduring character of all the characters in the history of the WWF/WWE.
Working with Flutie, how was he to do the book with?
Well, he wasn't cool about doing the book, but what he did was he talked into a tape recorder, sent me the tapes. He did it. He did his job, right? And I was happy with that. And again, they're all kind of thinking like, hey, it's not bad, the end result. To me, it's like, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
So they don't see it like I see it because I'm a writer. They're football players, they're athletes. They never see it like I do.
True. So where did we go? I want the Eddie O book, the undrafted book with COVID and all that. What's the best way to get it?
I would say go online to Amazon, amazon.com, amazon.ca, or Barnes and Noble or whatever, Indigo. Just punch it in there. And this book, one thing I'm proud of, it's really resonated with the cancer community. They have really embraced this book. And that's what Eddie wanted. I'm happy that we were able to accomplish that.
Perry, appreciate the time. This has flown by, literally. So I may be reaching out again at another time because we only scratched the surface with you. We may have to do this again. We may be on Netflix.
Thank you for allowing me this time. Nick wants to say goodbye too because Eddie's getting more FaceTime. Okay, so there you go.
Good point. Good point.
Thanks very much.
Perry, appreciate it. For all of us here, it's been Sports Week. It's COVID. We're in our living rooms. We're at home still. For Steve Foxcroft and Perry Lefko, our director, Brad Scott, have a sporting week, everyone. Thanks for watching.